Hey everyone, Joe Menza here. I got my coffee in my White Star Line Titanic cup. And we're going to go over to the board here. And I've got, this is just watercolor paper, acid free. But I've already applied a layer of the sand medium, the Liquitex sand medium, to give it that textural effect. And I'm going to go ahead and do another acrylic painting on this. I really enjoyed this last time. I'll go ahead and do it again. Making a sort of a cloud pattern here. One thing I've found with this acrylic is that a lot like using gouache and even watercolor, when you put white, it tends to fade back unless you really put a lot on there. And you lose it, whether it absorbs into the paper or the surrounding paint. So I'm kind of just putting in my blues here on the sky. And I'm going to add my whites in the areas where I'm leaving the white of the paper and kind of blend that a little bit. I'm grabbing a little bit of this white with a little bit of pink in there, a little too much pink. It really shouldn't use white all by itself. You should have a little pink or a little yellow, something in there. Just even if it tints it slightly. There's a little yellow ochre. It's probably a little too strong. So I'll go back with a little bit of the titanium white. And it seems to be, I'm using Golden's titanium white. I would imagine if you use a more premium artist grade white, it might not fade as much, but it still seems to do it. So here I just want to make a good sky. Again, we're doing loose here. We get a little more time to work than really watercolor. Watercolor, you only want to spend about 2 minutes on your sky. You probably have about 10 minutes maybe here before the paint really starts drying, but you can spritz it a little bit with some water. I like that yellow ochre mixed with the white. It gives a certain warmth, a warm yellow in the sky. So I'm just kind of hitting things here till I see a pattern that I like. Not a pattern that distracts you, but add a little Payne's gray in here. Something that contrasts. Back to a little bit more of that light blue, a little bit of white. And I'm grabbing from my Stay Wet palette that I like to use. Keeps the paints wet so you can put them out and put the top on and it seals it so that they stay wet in there and you don't have to keep putting paint out every time you go to paint. Since I paint every day, I like to quickly bring out my paints. That's why when I do my watercolor, I like to use pans. A lot of people say, why do you use those little half pans? They're just convenient. So I like this pattern that I have here. You'll notice I taped this down a little bit on the sides just to hold the paper down. Don't really have to worry about it buckling too much. This is a 140-pound watercolor paper, nothing expensive. And put a little water pattern here. Again, we're just tapping the brush against the paper. I want this to be easy and fun. You know, I want you to pick up a brush. I know a lot of times people watch videos just for the entertainment purposes, and that's great. But I've always felt like this was a really good, a therapeutic hobby, fun hobby. And even if you bought a little set of paper, little pans of paint, and you sat there and just kind of doodled, I think it's a fun thing to do. So I've taken a little of the burnt umber, I mix it with some white, and I just created like a little brown area. Let's see, I think I'm going to put a little, I love my mountains. So I'm going to put my mountain in here. Again, I'm using these Hake brushes if this is your first time saying, hey, I'm looking for loose acrylic painting videos. I'm a watercolor painter that used the Ron Ranson method which is no low fuss, using these goat hair brushes. Now, these may not be appropriate really for acrylic. I don't know. I mean, I have tons of them from doing my watercolors, so I don't mind sacrificing them. So far, it's been fine. I wash them, I reuse them. It really hasn't been an issue. I lose a hair here and there. We have a Ron Ranson group, by the way. If you're interested in watercolor painting, kind of like what I'm doing here with the acrylic, come on over to Facebook, join our watercolor group. You know, watercolor, I mean, everything has gone up in price. Everything is getting expensive. And with acrylic, you can get a lot more paint. You will use more paint, but you can get a lot more paint if you're going, quality paints. You can buy more acrylic paint in larger tubes. You can get like I don't know, 300 something mil. I mean, you can get a big tube for like $10, $15. Whereas you can pay $10 to $15 for a little tiny tube of watercolor paint. So I thought, well, let me start exploring these acrylics and see if we can do for acrylic what we did for watercolor. Make that a fun and loose type of thing. Not too hard for anyone to pick up and just enjoy. Now, you won't get some of that effect like you do with watercolor where, it's just the water settles into the paper and you kind of get that spontaneous effect, unless you really water down your acrylics, where you use a lot more water. You can use them like watercolor. This is kind of in between that. We're not using a lot of paint. We're using a little bit of water just to thin out the paint. And we're using, here's a close-up, by the way. This is my chalk brush, and this is a nice little brush to use for foliage. I'm trying to keep small foliage down. It creates more of a panoramic scene. But with the acrylic, you're kind of putting more layers of paint on than you would with watercolor. And you can paint over things and things like that. So as an in-between medium, if you've tried oils and you don't like the smell or the dry time or some of the other things associated with that, and watercolor is very expensive or it seems too challenging to do, acrylic really fits in the middle there, and it's very versatile. You can paint heavier, you can use a palette knife, all those things. Like right now I'm using a fan brush. Notice the way I'm just tapping this on. I'm not like painting necessarily. Just a nice touch. We're doing grass here and foliage. Notice our sky's done. It looks nice over that mountain. And I'm kind of framing out this little lake here. And these should be done. I find that the sweet spot for painting, really no more than 30 minutes, unless you're really painting some detailed thing from a photo. But spontaneous, fast, and loose paintings, they shouldn't go really much over 20 minutes. 22 minutes may be fine, but after that, and you start looking at it and changing it, and you end up with a completely different painting. I can go back and I look at my videos here, and I can see any video. I can stop at the 15-minute mark if I did a 30-minute, and it's like I should have stopped at 15. I mean, there was a lot of techniques I was trying to show, but at the same time, I had a good painting at 15 minutes. So that's how you don't overwork it, is just set a time for yourself. Say 15 minutes, stop here, that's it. So when you start painting over something, if it's a minor thing you want to fix because your eye's drawn to it in an odd way, that's fine. And if you don't like it, just then say, I'm going on to my next painting. I'm not going to sit here and change this one. You can always paint on the back of the paper. There's other textural things you can do in other videos I've done. Sand medium, making a rough texture underneath, that works really well. You can use paper, canvas, wood, board. There's a lot of different surfaces you can work on. MDF panel. I'm just highlighting a few things here with this chalk brush, a little lemon yellow. In this foliage here in grass, we've got yellow ochre, lemon yellow. And I use a green called Jenkins green, and it is in the golden line. And it's a very nice ready-made green. I can add a little Payne's gray or blue to it to kind of shift it. And now I'm just putting a little darker border on this little lake, little river or whatever it looks like to you. Just enjoying myself, having my coffee. And that should do it. My main thing I wanted to start doing when I was doing these, I wanted to kind of make the horizon line and foliage and stuff low and kind of work more on skies, because the skies are always the first challenge, the first hurdle. When you always see those and you want to do those in your painting, so you say, I want to make a nice sky. But if it, competes too much with the lower area, well, then that's not going to work either. So push down your horizon line and make that your focus. Okay, I'm going to do mostly sky things here, and then I'm just going to kind of put a little, horizon area with, just a few little things, little bushes, little things like that. Working on this one bush over here. Rinsing off I have a jar of water here. And a towel in front of me I can dab stuff off on. Just checking to see if it's dry, because I went a little thicker on the paint. Grabbing my rigger brush, but I'm not going to use that here, I don't think. I was going to put a couple birds in, but it's still a little too wet. Let's see what it looks like with the mat. It looks pretty nice. It's still a little wet, so I don't want to lay this here. So I think we got something good there. Blend that. There's still a little wet here where this pink is. I'm just kind of blending that a little bit. Zoom in a little bit. I think we got a nice diversified sky there. Let's look at this up close. And again with the mat, and I thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you had a good time. I did. And I will see you on the next video.